Alrighty, so you're going to need some thread locker. You can see I'm using thread locker blue, a hammer, a metal wire brush or sandpaper, a 14mm socket and ratchet, or a 14mm wrench. That'll work too. In this case here I'm using a 14mm wrench. You need the wrench for sure, but a socket helps too. A pry bar or flathead, your parts. You need a Phillips head screwdriver, or in this case a drill. I found it much easier. A caliper wind down piston tool. In this case I used the number 6, but it can vary by tools. Some caliper lube, some disc brake quiet, some anti-seize, and disc cleaner. Alright, so here's what you're going to be loosening. Here is the 2 caliper bolts up here. Those are 14mm. Behind here are the caliper bracket bolts. There's one, and the other is over, not that one, that's up above, right there, that one. That's a 14, they're both 14mm as well. And those are the 2 Phillips heads that hold the rotor in place. You need to take those out. And that little hole is to help remove the rotor if it's stuck. We'll talk about that after. So you can see I've just taken the 14mm here, removing the 2 caliper bolts. That's where you're going to start off. There is, if you see there, you can use a wrench if you need to secure it, but as you can see I didn't need to do that. I just used a wrench for the bottom. I couldn't get a socket in the bottom, that's why you need a wrench for sure, but I prefer using ratchets, so I used the ratchet for the top. Took out one there. You can see you can just wind them out by hand. That shouldn't be a problem as of now. Now this here I can get off pretty well, but I'm just going to use you can use a flathead or a small pry bar and slowly lift it out just to release it from there. It could get stuck depending on the condition of the brakes and condition of where you live and stuff. So, I just got that out there. Now, normally I tie the calipers down up on the suspension or anything, but the reality is because of the stiffness of the ebrake cable, you can just place it right there and it'll stay. It won't even move. I just had placed it there and it didn't move at all. Now, I'm using a pry bar to remove the brake pads from there. It does hold on to it pretty well. If you're planning to keep the rotors, if they're still in good condition, be careful doing this. Doing it like this could damage your rotor. In this case, I know we're doing the rotors as well, so I didn't really care so much. But that's probably. Notice the clip too is facing upward. That's important because that's where they will be. That's where you have to place it. There's no lower clip. It's only an upper clip. So I'm just removing it out here with the pry. There you go. Now I'm going to go after these bolts at the back here. So we're going to take those out. Pretty straightforward as well. It's just a matter of using the ratchet, or if you want to use the wrench as well, and loosening them out. See, it didn't take much effort at all. I didn't even have to use a hammer or like a breaker bar or anything. They came out pretty well. They're not heavily torqued. That's one. Note the thread locker on there. That's why you need the thread locker on. There's some on there. I mean, technically, even if you have a car that doesn't have them, doesn't hurt to put some thread locker back on anyways. But this one does have it, so we will be putting it back on. Alright, now we're going to take these 2 screws out. Now, if you did it by hand, it's going to be significantly harder, especially with rust or anything. That's why I use the drill. They come out nice and easy with the drill. Carefully, don't strip them or break them, though. But, I mean, they're not technically necessary, to be honest. The rotors, you can be held just the same. Now, here you can see I'm telling you, if the rotor is not coming off from the hub, you can run a bolt through there, and it'll actually break it away. Or you can use a hammer and tap it from the top away from the shield. Now we're going to clean up these areas. You just want to use your, again, a wire brush or sandpaper. Clean up where the caliper bracket bolts kind of attach in there. See, I'm just going to give it a quick scuff. You just want to get off any rust or salt or anything that's gotten there. And you also want to do that for around the hub. They may have some, if you see here, there looks like there's some anti-seize or some sort of compound on there. Clean them up as best as you can. I clean around the hub too and everything, because you're going to apply some new one. We'll show you after, but just right now it's just a matter of getting everything off as much as you can, get around the whole ring, everything. I won't show you the whole thing, waste your time too much. You get the idea. Then after that, spray it with some brake cleaner. You can see all the crap that's coming off of there. I have a drain pan underneath that's collecting all that. I don't want that to go on my driveway or anything, so I put a drain pan under and collect all of it. Now we're going to compare our brake pads. You want to make sure things like the squeal sensors are in the same spot. Pads are the same shape, size. Obviously they're wore down, so they're not going to have the same thickness, but you want to make sure all the mounting areas where it goes into clips and everything are all the same. Do your general kind of comparisons on them. Make sure that you have the right parts, because it sucks getting stuck in those situations where you have the wrong parts. Rare, but it happens. Then same thing here with the rotors. You just want to compare them, make sure that they're roughly the same width. You want to make sure that you got the right parts. You want to also compare things like where the screw bolts are for the rotor hold down screws and everything. You want to make sure they're all the same. Something simple you can do is just put your rotor on top and just compare the bolts and make sure they all line up. I'll show you here. Let's see. Oh, no. I had to adjust slightly. Just turn it a bit, just for the sake of the video. I mean, you could tell just by looking at it was right, but for the sake of the video, I just wanted to show you just for the sake of. All looks good, so we're all set there. So now I put the rotor on the wrong way. Nope, that's not a trick. But I just find it easier to spray down. I put the drain pan underneath, put it on the wrong way, and then spray the back with brake cleaner, and then use a clean rag and kind of wipe it down. So in case you don't know, or you maybe you do, but when they ship these, they put a coating on them. It just helps them from rusting or contaminants and stuff. You want to get all that off. As you can see that stuff on there. You know, you don't want that interfering with your brakes or your initial break-in period. So then I took it off. Before we put it on the right way, I'm going to put some anti-seize now. So I'm just going to grab some anti-seize and put it around there. That's just going to help with the rust prevention and everything in the future. You know, one less thing to worry about, right? Whenever you have to do these, you know, a couple years from now or whatever the case, depending on your driving habits. All right, now you're going to, when you put these on, don't worry about the grease on there. We'll clean that up after, but avoid it if you can. But now we're going to compare these holes, because if you look, the holes here are off-center. If you look where the two holes are, there's 3 lugs on one side, 2 on the other. So you want to put them the same way. See, those 2 are there, and we're going to line them up the same way. There's your 3 lugs, and then there's your 2 lugs. So we want to line that up as best as we can. There's only one way to do it, so do it the one way. Again, if you don't, it's not a big deal. It'll mount up on its own, actually. Those are just there as hold downs. It helps, but trust me, it's not necessary. But trust me, if they're there, you haven't broken any bolts or anything, definitely put it in. So I just thread those in by hand as much as possible. Should go in nice and smooth. And then I'll just use the drill to top them up. And in case you're wondering, it does go to 89 to 123 inch-pounds. So very, very little torque on them. I use the drill and just zip them quick and then pull away. I don't even wail on them. You don't need to. And you can put some anti-seize on them as well if you want. So now I'm just going to spray the front down. I'm going to use my rag and clean the rotor itself. I don't care too much about the hub part because there's a little grease on there. The wheel's going to contact it. But hey, if you want to clean it, by all means, it doesn't hurt. So now we're going to take down the brake clips here. We're going to take those rusty old ones out. We got some fresh new ones to go in. So we just break that out with you can use the flathead or a little pry bar as I'm using here. Take those out. A little bit difficult, some of the rust and stuff on there, but they come off pretty good. So I'm just going to use my wire brush or sandpaper. And I'm going to clean those areas. I'm going to clean where the caliper bracket bolts go, and I'm going to just give a light brush to where the caliper pins go. Nothing significant. You're just trying to get off any sediment or buildup or rust or salt or anything on there. Clean that up good. Make it nice and shiny. Well, it doesn't have to be too shiny. A little shiny is good. There we go. And here you definitely want to give work. These areas are always going to have a ton of rust buildup. So, you know, just go at them, clean them up. You can see all the stuff that's coming out of there. Look at that. All right, clean that up. You want as flat a surface as possible for when you put the new clips in. You can see all the rust that's coming out of there. Fair bit of rust dust. So if you want to wear a mask too, wear a mask too. Protect yourself from that stuff. It's not good for you. Now I'm going to just take some brake cleaner and I'm going to spray it down and just give it a second to soak out. Not too long, but you know, just get it cleaned up. All right, now we pull back the boot on the pins, and we're going to take those out to clean them up and re-grease them. You can see the black on there, that's old grease. I'm going to clean those out really well. See, nice and silver. It looked all black before, nice and silver now. Yeah, that's all old grease. So I'm going to take you can see it there. And now we're going to grab some caliper lube. All right, word of warning to you. Don't look at this first pin. I actually didn't put a lot on this first pin as much as I should have. Should have been a bit more. And I put it in. Then I did the second pin. Do more like the second pin. You don't want to put too little, but you don't want to do too much either. I did pull this pin after and redo it. I realized afterwards I didn't put enough. But yeah, you want to make sure. And then when you put it in, you do want to make sure it moves freely. But put more like how you'll see on this pin. This is the pin. I put a little bit more, grease on there, some lube. So you want to make sure you lubing up pretty well. Again, but too much is not good either. It can cause it to actually jam up, or actually it'll seep through the boot and allow dirt to get in. So not too much. But if you put too little, it'll deteriorate over time and then seize in there. You don't want that either. Alright, so here you're going to see I'll grease it up now. So you can see this is some thicker coating on here for sure. It's more like that. It's what you want. Not like the first one. The first one was a little too thin. I'll admit it. Alright. And same idea. You push as soon as you push the boot in, the boot should automatically click in. It's got like a seal on there. And then you want to move it and make sure it moves freely. So, and you're all good. Now we're going to put the clip in. When you put the clip in, you want to make sure it lines up to the caliper bracket perfectly, right? So you don't want any overhang or anything like that, because that can actually contact your rotor, your nice new shiny rotor, and score it or damage it or anything. So you want to make sure that when it goes in, as you can see, it's nice and flat in there. It's not sitting up anywhere or anything like that. And you want to take a look and make sure that it's sitting flush. There's no overhangs. It lines up directly. So note the spring loads on there. That's not common on a lot of cars. I've seen it on a few, but not a lot. But it does help. It keeps more tension in there. But at the same time, it is a little trickier to put the brake pad in. I'll show you what I did in a second. So here you want to grease up. These are the points where the actual brake pad meets the clips. Put a little grease on there. It helps with the movement, especially initially and stuff like that. So I put some caliper lube. And note the brackets that are at the top. These have to face upward. Right, they're not the lower part, so make sure you line them up correctly. Now, I am actually going to go and put the lower one in. I'll tell you right now, because of this spring load, there's a spring load at the bottom, as you can see there, and two spring loads at the top, one that's on the pad and one that's on the clip. This makes it very kind of tricky to get in there because it actually forces it to want to pop out all the time. It's kind of frustrating to deal with, as you can see here. Again, on one end it's probably good. It probably creates tension and allows the pads to move more effectively. But on the other end, it is annoying to deal with. As you can see here, you got to really kind of work it in and make sure it goes. Now, you can see it's on there. And now I'm going to put our bracket on. Now, it is worth noting that I didn't put the outer pad yet. I have a reason for that. We'll get to that in a second. First thing I want to let you know, though, that is those brackets there. They do go to 38 to 48 foot-pounds. So generally, a lot of cars now come with ranges for their torque. So I just kind of go with a happy medium, like in the middle. So let's say 44 foot-pounds. But it is 38 to 48. Be careful when doing this not to knock the back pad out. I find it very hard to work with to get it back in there when it's on the car, because it's hard to see, and working with those spring-loaded clips are a little bit tricky. Also, you notice I put the thread locker on. Sorry I didn't show you that, but I did put the thread locker on. You can see it on there, the blue. So just working that in there, and we're going to tighten that up. Sorry I didn't show it, though. All right, we're going to do the top one here. Now, when you're doing the front pad, because of where that kind of caliper goes right here at the bottom, you can't just put it in straight. So I have to kind of put it in sideways, load it in, make sure those clips are in like that, and I used a hammer and just tapped it. Just a light tap, not hard, just a light tap and got it in there. You can try and preload it, and I actually tried to do that on the other side, but the problem is when I tried to put it in and get the bolts lined up, it actually kept popping out. So I found this was much easier. So I put it in sideways and tapped it. Now you're going to spray some disc brake quiet onto the shims. It just kind of helps keep the noise down, any vibrations or anything. I find this stuff actually works pretty well, so it doesn't hurt. You could put grease as well. That definitely works. So now there we have to wind back that piston. This doesn't actually just push back. You actually do have to wind it. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a wire brush and gently clean it up. Stay away from the boot. You don't want to damage the rubber boot or anything. Just cleaning this up to give it a much flatter surface, as flat as possible. There you go. See, it's a little better. Looks a little better. Now, notice this little notch here, right? It's on both sides, inner and outer. See right there, that notch? That notch has to match up, obviously, with the inner pad, not the outer. So when you're winding it, you do have to make sure that there's 4 of them. You see there's 4 notches. You have to make sure the 4 notches do actually line up. If they don't, the caliper simply won't go on. It seems like it's stuck or jammed, and that's not the case. It's just the notch. Actually, believe it or not, even knowing this before going in, I still made that mistake twice, believe it or not. I was like, what's going on? Oh, right. And you'll actually see in the video in a second. Watch, I'll wind it back here. Well, we'll get to that in a second. So we're just going to go here and just wind it back. As you're winding, before we get, as you see me winding here, make sure you check your brake fluid, because if your brake fluid has been topped up or full, when you're winding this back, it's going to push the fluid back, and that's going to create a problem. So make sure you go and siphon out the fluid if you need to, if it's been topped up. So now you see I've wound it back. It takes just 2 minutes to do with the tool. And I put it on, and you can see it goes on part way, right up to there, and I'm like, well, I want to fit. Oh, right, I forgot. So you got to put the notch in. So I just took the plate. It doesn't take much to wind that thing. It actually was moving quite smooth as long as it hasn't worn, and I just backed it with hand. I didn't push it forward. Instead, I backed it back out a bit, right? You don't want to push it any further once you get it kind of flush. And then we put it on, and then it just kind of clips in, and away you go. So now we're going to put in our caliper bolts. Now these go to 17 to 22 foot-pounds. That's the range on these. And of course, as usual, I always do it by hand. Some people are mixed about putting thread locker on these. I never do. I do it on the heavier duty bolts, sure, but not these ones here. Some people say you should, but I find that if you need to do regular maintenance on your car, check your brake pad service or anything, putting thread locker defeats the whole purpose, right? So I never do. As long as you do the proper torque, you'll never, ever, ever have an issue. All right. Now this one here, again, you can't get the socket in, so it is hard to know. You just got to kind of do it by hand unless you use some extensions or anything, but it can be done. But all tightened up, all ready to go, and you're all set. Yay!
So you may be wondering how you do the setting for the brakes. So that's just a matter of first making sure you're in a safe area, make sure there's not a lot of traffic or anything like that, because you're gonna have to be doing some accelerating and light braking just to set in the brakes. So that's a matter of accelerating up to about 20 to 30 kilometers an hour. It's roughly 15 to 20 miles per hour. And then braking. And then when you brake, you don't come to a dead stop. You allow the car to just stop down to a couple miles per hour, a couple kilometers per hour, and then you start accelerating again. Light acceleration, very light acceleration. Don't be flooring it or anything like that. And then once you get to 20, 30 kilometers an hour, 15, 20 miles, brake a little bit again. Again, don't sit on the brakes. You especially don't want to try and avoid coming to a stop, or if you do, put it in park and let your foot off the brake if something happens you need to. Because as you're sitting in the brakes, if you stay one spot with the brakes as they're setting in, the heat that could be generating could cause some early warping or damage to the brakes, especially if you're doing a lot of brake and stop. So you want to make sure that you're you're avoiding that for this first little bit. So here, see right now, I'm just going to get up right about 20 kilometers an hour here. I'm braking down just under 10 there. We're going to go back again. See what I'm doing there? Now, once you do this a few times, you'll feel the brakes actually become firmer. You'll notice the braking actually improves. Instead of just going out and start driving right away, you'll notice an improvement in the brakes. Once this is done, for the first 60 miles, 100 kilometers particularly, do make sure you're being very, very easy on the brakes. No heavy braking, anything like that. Just so it gives you some extra burnishing time and extra time to kind of work the brakes in. After that, drive how you normally drive. Still be safe, but drive how you normally drive. And then you're all set. As you can see right now, I can already feel the improvements in the brakes. It's all operating much better. Very, very firm. That's all you need.
Thank you everyone for watching. I do appreciate all the support out there. Don't forget to throw a like on that video if it helped you, if you found the information useful, anything like that. Make sure to like it. Don't forget to subscribe, help the channel grow, and hit the notification if you want to see more of my videos. If you dislike the video, that's okay, no problem at all, but don't be a troll, alright? Make sure you put why in the comments. I mean, maybe I missed something, maybe I got something wrong, maybe there's something you feel better or you didn't like how I filmed. Whatever it is, put it in there. I make these videos to help people out, so I can only make it better if I get the feedback, but I need the feedback. Just don't be trolling, alright? Otherwise, if you have any other comments, feel free to do so. I answer questions whenever I can. If you want to add something on there, if you have a helpful tip that maybe I didn't cover, I didn't even know about, make sure to put that in the comments as well. I want to thank everyone, and I will see you all next video.